Jaya Kunjali Jamna Vala Jaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 3, text 9, text 38. Yasyakatangamatstotram Matkata Bayudayan Kitam Yatkatapasiti Nishta Sa Ishama Anugraha Yasyakatangamatstotram Matkatam Bayudayan Kitam Yadgatapasiti Nishta Sa Ishamananugraha Yasyakatangamatstotram Matkatam Bayudayan Kitam Yadgatapasini Nishta Sa Ishamananugraha Yasyakatangamatstotram Matkatam Bayudayan Kitam Yadgatapasini Nishta Sa Ishamananugraha Yat, that which Jakarta performed, Anga, O Brahma, Matstotram, prayers for me, Matata, words regarding my activities, Abhyudaya Ankitam, enumerating my transcendental glories. Yat, or that, va, either, tapasya, in penance, te, your, nishta, faith, sa, that, isha, all these, mat, my, anugraha, causeless mercy. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all these are to be considered my causeless mercy. For when a living entity desires to serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, the Lord helps the devotee in so many ways as the Chaitya Guru or the spiritual master within, and thus the devotee can perform many wonderful activities beyond material estimation. By the mercy of the Lord, even a layman can compose prayers of the highest spiritual perfection. Such spiritual perfection is not limited by material qualifications, but is developed by dint of one's sincere endeavor to render transcendental service. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. Material acquisitions of wealth and education are not considered. Om Agyantamarandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshurmikavina Shri Guruve Namaha. Actually, reading this verse, I was just remembering this. There's a wonderful verse in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in chapter 6:24 that says, one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. A very good voice. So we understand in Bhakti Yoga, in our Bhakti school, that without strong faith, one cannot possess determination. It means that if we don't really believe in the goal, and the goal, of course, is to develop our love and understanding of Krishna and at the end of this life go back to our real home in the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. But if we don't believe in this goal, and we don't really believe in the method for achieving this goal, which is this process of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, how can we remain determined? And this applies to all spiritual practices, perfection in all fields of yoga. It doesn't manifest very quickly. It's not that we become pure devotees overnight. It's a gradual process. Therefore, a yogi not only must have fixed determination, but he must have patience. It takes some time. So although this path of spiritual perfection, it sometimes appears a little difficult due to so many influences, past conditioning and the influences of the modern age. But if one is determined, we're reading here, the Supreme Lord will help us. He'll help us both within, as a super soul, and without, as a spiritual master, who is said to be an external manifestation of the super soul. So that in this verse in Bhagavad Gita, we're hearing about the consciousness of someone whose mind is just set on achieving one's spiritual goal in life. His mind and his sensual activities are controlled and fixed in his spiritual practices. Therefore, he cannot be deviated from his determination to achieve the ultimate goal. So the question we may ask is how to get such determination in our spiritual life. how to get this just sheer determination to really achieve this highest level of spiritual perfection, pure love for Krishna. Once finally, after maybe tens of thousands of lifetimes in this material world, taking birth in so many different species of life on different planets, finally, after many, many lifetimes, we've come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. This is just so rare to get that opportunity. But once we've come in contact with this bona fide spiritual master and we get this knowledge, how to develop our love for Krishna, much of our progress actually depends on how determined we are to attain the transcendental goal. So, in reality, when we think about it, in any walk of life, if one wants to attain some level of success, if you want to become a successful businessman, you have to work in your business for so many years, building up the business. Or if you want to become an Olympic athlete, these athletes, I'm a swimmer, so I'm swimming down the pool, doing my laps. And right next to me, in the lap next to me, is Cody Simpson. Cody Simpson, he's like the top Olympic Australian swimmer. And I hear this guy can swim. But to get to that level of where he is, my God, every day these guys are down there swimming like 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. And they sometimes, and you see them, they start when they're like little kids. 2 or 3 years old, they get them swimming. And they're there every day, swimming, training in these squads. Even if you want to become, a musician, an accomplished musician, you have to practice like for years and years, to become, to join an orchestra or something, you just got to practice, and, they start when they're little kids. To become a tradesman, an academic scholar, even just to get a degree at university. They don't just hand out their degrees very easily. They really make you sweat for those degrees. You've got to work. You've got to get those assignments in. So any walk of life, if one wants to become successful, it requires some effort and sacrifice. So similarly in spiritual life also, it's the same. If one wants to attain some spiritual perfection, it requires a determined effort, some perseverance. Not you can just be lazy and not wholeheartedly apply oneself and just opt out for just this easygoing life and achieve the ultimate goal, the highest. It may take many lifetimes, but if you want to really get there in this life, you really need to get focused. And of course, what we're reading in this verse is the more the Supreme Lord sees our determination in wanting to come to him and serve him sincerely, the more he'll help us. The more he'll help us. We cannot succeed without his blessings. This is a reality. But still, we have to show our sincerity by making a determined effort. It's not that it's just the mercy does everything and we do nothing. Just like one example given once in a class is that some people think that the mercy of the Guru does everything and we don't have to do anything. It's just like in Africa, they have these elephants and they have these little palanquins on top of the elephant. And the elephant's going through the jungle and there's a couple of guys out there, and he's cutting down the jungle, making the path for the elephant. And we're just sitting up there on the elephant enjoying the ride. So it's like the mercy of the Guru. The Guru's out there making the path, giving us the mercy, and we just, enjoy the nice ride. The mercy does everything and we don't have to really do anything. And we have to actually apply ourselves to the process. And, there may be so many situations, there may be so many impediments that arise in our spiritual life, difficulties. However, it is said that humility, if we're humble and we're determined, it can lead to incredible results beyond what we can think possible. For as the saying goes, the Lord helps those who help themselves. Of course, in Bhakti Yoga, we learn that, whatever happens in our life, in our spiritual life, whatever obstacles and difficulties and troubles that come up, and, this is something we understand. When someone takes up the spiritual path or the spiritual journey, it's not all just easy cruising, you could say. There's difficulties, there's obstacles, but a devotee, he simply sees this as part of their spiritual journey. Teaching us the lessons that we need to learn. They're like all the difficulties that come in our life are actually stepping stones to take us places in our spiritual life where we never would have gone without them. Yes. And it's through these tests and obstacles and struggles and difficulties that we experience on our spiritual journey that we gain so much spiritual strength and so much purification, and we make so much advancement. Actually, all these difficulties in our bhakti skill, we learn that ultimately all these obstacles that come into our life on our spiritual journey are there to help us, to inspire us, to take shelter of the Supreme Lord, to take shelter of the association of devotees, to take shelter of the chanting of the holy name, to take shelter of these sacred literatures, to take shelter of the whole processes of devotional service. So, in this verse, we're hearing about the Lord within the supersoul. The Vedic literatures explain that at the beginning of creation, the Lord expands himself as a Kshirodakshayi Vishnu, known as the Supersoul, the Paramatma, who enters the heart of all living entities and remains there in our heart as our constant companion. He's there, witnessing all our activities and desires. And he remains there in our heart forever, day after day, year after year, as our true and dearest friend. Whether we worship him or to deny him. For tens of thousands of lifetimes, we've denied him, we've forgotten Krishna. But he hasn't forgotten us. And he's always said that he's always running after us. It's just like you have a dear friend and you just ignore them. Probably they won't be your friend for very long. But not Krishna. He's such a dear, good, amazing, true friend that even if we deny him and ignore him, he won't give us up. He never abandons us. And the moment we turn to him, he's there for us. And he's always just waiting there just for us to turn to him and realize that I'm your friend. I'm your dearest friend. I want to be your friend. And of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us, as a super soul, he is the source of all our abilities and intelligence and everything. He's supplying all our needs according to our needs and desires. So the point is, whatever we desire to do or accomplish in life, we're completely dependent on the direction of the Lord within our heart. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, we're not the doer. Just like one example, Just like I have his hand. And if I tell his hand, up, it won't move. It doesn't move. To move that hand, I have to desire for that hand to move up. And the super soul, through the agency of material energy, is moving that hand. I'm not doing anything. I'm simply desiring, and the Lord, the super soul, is doing everything. We're not to do it. When we look at the obstacles to our advancement in Krishna consciousness, and I could speak for myself, sometimes we may doubt whether we'll be able to overcome these obstacles and difficulties in life. We may even start to think that this is just the way I am. I'm just a conditioned soul. I can never really be an advanced devotee or a pure devotee. There's really actually very little I can do about it. But however, in reality, we're hearing from these Vedic literatures that there's much we can do about it, in fact. There's much we can do. This whole process of bhakti yoga is the very method for doing much about it. Research surveys confirm that change can take place if a person is convinced they can change. So we have to be convinced, for a start, that we can actually overcome our shortcomings and make great advancement in spiritual life. So your desire to change for the better simply needs to be strong enough. And when Krishna sees that we are really sincere and determined in our efforts to advance, he'll help us from within. He's there. So what we thought was impossible starts to look a lot easier to achieve. As the saying goes, God helps those who help themselves. We have to make the effort. When he sees that we're not only praying for the mercy, but he sees that we're also making an active effort to achieve what we're praying for, then he really helps us. Even when we're doing our chanting, there's many different levels of chanting. I heard a really good example given by one devotee. It's like when you're chanting, it's like when a baby's crying. Just say a baby, sometimes babies, they just cry because they want attention. And they say, no, sadness has a lot of experience in this.
Why do they want the attention?
They just want attention. They start crying, right? So the mother, she knows that cry. She knows that cry. They just wants attention. Sometimes they just leave him. If the baby falls out of his cot or what's that little chair they sit in? What do they call those little chairs? Where they eat their food. They fall out of their chairs. Then that cry, the mother knows that cry. Isn't it? That's like the kids, he's really done something terrible. They run to the child. So when we're chanting, if we're chanting in that mood where we're really crying out for Krishna, really, Krishna, I need help. Please accept me. I'm just so overcome by this powerful, deluding material energy. I have no love for you, no devotion. I need your help. I need your mercy. If you're really chanting in that mood, Krishna, he really he really knows he's got to takes interest. You really attract Krishna's attention. If you're just chanting mechanically and Krishna doesn't, it's not so much reciprocation there. So Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita that we can easily cross this ocean of powerful, deluding material energy if our purpose and our desire to surrender are strong. It said as soon as you accept Krishna's instructions, in a sense, that is surrender. when you take up this process of Krishna consciousness, as you become more and more absorbed in this devotional process, you experience there's a whole new way of thinking and acting. It just becomes natural. It means simultaneously and consciously you select unfavorable attachments to your spiritual advancement. And it may be so many things. It may be just laziness or inattentiveness or attachments to certain things. You start practicing cutting them at the root. And at the same time, you fully take shelter of the bhakti process with a strong desire to change. So despite all the help and the good association we get, ultimately it comes down to we have to do the work of improving ourselves personally. Yes. As they say, we must fly our own aeroplanes. Though the spiritual master and Krishna can teach us the process of Krishna consciousness and give us their mercy, the spiritual master may even pray for us, but they cannot force us to follow this process of Krishna consciousness. In this sense, our spiritual advancement is really, it's in our own hands. And no one can chant our rounds for us. No one can read Srimad Bhagavatam. No one can do devotional service. No one can wake us up in the morning and get us to the temple. It's our choice how much we want to apply ourselves to the process. And unfortunately, some people, some devotees, they make all sorts of excuses. They blame their past. I had a bad upbringing, my parents. They say maybe it's my karma. I'm not really, very advanced from my past life, and therefore Krishna consciousness is more difficult for me than others. But they blame their husband or their wife or their job or the leaders of the temple or whatever. There's so many, whatever. They blame so many, make so many excuses for their lack of enthusiasm and sincere endeavor. Yet we understand with every excuse they make, they're taking a step back from Krishna. And in foolishly rationalizing why they don't want to surrender to Krishna. Even Prabhupada says some people are just too intelligent. They're too smart. They can come up with so many different reasons, even philosophical reasons, why they can't surrender. So if someone never comes in contact with Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada said they're very unfortunate. But if someone comes in contact with Krishna consciousness, but doesn't take advantage of the opportunity, they're the most unfortunate persons. Yes. So we're all naturally beloved children of the Supreme Lord, aren't we? Nothing can ever change that. But we've given the freedom to love and serve him. But we've also given the choice to turn away from him and seek happiness elsewhere. We have that choice. But even if we turn away from him, at any moment, we can still choose to return to him and accept his love. He's waiting there for us. Return to him, return to his love, and experience his great art of loving and serving and pleasing him, which brings the ultimate inner happiness, peace, and satisfaction. If we choose to reject him, and Prabhupada would talk about this in many verses in the lectures, and if we just choose to reject him, and we determine to do so, and nothing can change our mind, we're so stubborn, then what happens is we voluntarily accept the cycle of repeated birth and death. It means we choose to continue suffering birth, death, old age, and disease in a material body, life after life. So Krishna is a super soul. He's situated in our hearts. He's witnessing all our activities, all our desires. And according to our activities and the desires we have cultivated, he will award us a body amongst the 8,400,000 species of life. And if we've performed spiritual activities and cultivated these pure spiritual desires, and he can take us back to Godhead. We can remember him at the time of death. He'll take us back. So in this way, the Supreme Lord, it is said, he simply fulfills the desires of all living entities, as a friend fulfills the desires of another. But at the same time, he always remains neutral to everyone. He doesn't interfere with our free will and independence. He simply witnesses our actions, ordains or confirms our actions and desires, and he remains neutral. He allows all punishments or rewards or destinies to be carried out through the agency of material nature. You know, Srila Prabhupada used to call this misuse of one's independence and free will as voluntarily drinking poison. It's pretty heavy. Voluntarily drinking poison or spoiling this precious opportunity of this human form, which is meant for self-realization, and preparing ourselves for the best next life to go back to Godhead. You know, the point is, whatever we desire to accomplish in life, we're completely dependent on the direction of the Supreme Lord in our heart. You know, if we want to go deeper into understanding the nature of reality and discover the purpose, the vision, and the plan of the Supreme Lord behind this beautiful creation, and learn how to act in accordance with his cosmic plan, and understand our true spiritual identity beyond this body and mind, and ultimately our ultimate purpose in life, we need Krishna's help. And if we want to forget him and simply be in Maya, or illusion, and forget him, we also need his help, even to do that. We're completely dependent on him. So if we're truly interested in our own welfare, we will be careful to only do those things that benefit ourselves and also benefit others. Yes. It means we want to keep ourselves happy in Krishna consciousness. We cannot neglect our spiritual practices. Or that, you could say, old habits dominate our lives. You know, actually, Mahatma Prabhu, you know, he was just here recently, he does all these seminars. One of his favorite sayings is that improving our devotional service is as much an act of self-love as it is an offering of love to Krishna. It's interesting, a good one. It means we have to take full responsibility for our spiritual life and offer our life and soul to Krishna, you know, for his pleasure. And he will, in this sense, as we're reading in this verse, by doing that, he'll reciprocate with us. He'll protect us, empower us, and help us grow amidst all the obstacles of life. So this willingness to put aside material sense gratification and control the senses and mind to pursue this higher purpose in life, this is called determination. And we learn in our bhakti school that, you know, the duty of a disciple of a spiritual master is to be fixed in one's determination to execute the order and instructions of one's guru at any cost, despite all problems and obstacles. We just stick to the path of Krishna consciousness. And this determination, it must be accompanied by faith. As I said, without strong faith, both in the goal and the process for achieving the goal, we cannot possess determination. We have to have faith in the goal and the process. Yes. And faith is so incredible. You know, when we have faith in our inner higher self, and our connection with the energy and the power and the love of the Supreme Lord, we can do incredible things with complete confidence, enthusiasm, and perseverance. We have to really put our hearts into trying to please the Supreme Lord by developing this loving devotional attitude. This is the true essence of Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is so amazing. It doesn't mean it's I don't remember this story that Radhanath Swami tells. It's an interesting story. It's about Wilma Rudolph. You heard of a Wilma Rudolph? She was a lady that lived back in the 60s. She's from Tennessee in Texas. So this girl, she was in a very terrible car accident when she was a little girl. And actually, it was so bad that the doctors, you know, they had her there after her operations. And they were talking to her and her mother, and they said to her mother that told her actually personally, and even though she was just a little girl, that actually you'll never walk on these legs again. You'll be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Pretty hard thing to have to stomach, you know. But she told her mother, she said, no. She said, I want to run on these legs. I want to be the fastest runner in the whole world. And the doctors were like, oh, they were just like smirking to themselves, you know, at her incredible determination and, you know, her, you know. But, you know, later as she grew up, she had to wear these big iron things on her legs, and she started hobbling along a bit with these iron casts. And she finally got them off, and she used to go, and she went to school, and at the sports day, she used to go on the races, and she used to come so far back in the race, so much last, that people, they used to laugh at her and make jokes, make fun of her, and they'd tell her, why do you go on these races? You know, you can't run. And, actually her mother, when she said that I want to be the fastest runner in the world, I want to run these things, her mother said, yeah, you just have faith in the Lord. By His mercy, anything's possible. So, after she used to go to school and she used to come last in the races, everyone used to make fun of her. But then, gradually she just kept training, exercising, and she just kept her faith in her higher self, her inner self, and the Supreme Lord. And then later, in 1963, she took out 3 gold medals at the Olympic Games. And she set world records for running. So it just shows you, if you have faith in your inner self, and you have faith in the Supreme Lord, Anything's possible. So Krishna consciousness is so amazing. I mean, it doesn't mean we turn our back on the world. Rather, we learn how to spiritualize our whole existence by connecting everyday activities to the loving service of the Lord. Mysticism. Yes. Yes. So this Krishna consciousness Bhakti Yoga, it's open to everyone to come and experience how true spirituality opens the door to an extraordinary life of transforming consciousness and awakening our love for the Supreme Lord and our love for each other, which flows naturally out into the world in the form of compassion for all living entities. So Srila Prabhupada, he's created our good fortune. He organized so many things to attract us to Krishna consciousness. He opened the door to everyone without discrimination. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Oh, I didn't ask if there's any questions. It's a bit late.